Welcome back, policy entrepreneurs. We started this course on health policy by focusing on ways in which nurses and nurse leaders both can influence the process of public policy, whether we do that individually or through a professional nursing organization. We looked at moving a problem to the government's attention to bring about legislative change. We've been working hard. We've been also focusing on legislation and politics. In this learning unit, which is learning unit number 6, we're going to transition from a focus on legislation, which is the process of getting bills enacted into law, to regulation, to governmental regulation, how these laws will be put into practice. So we're starting with that compare and contrast between the legislative and regulatory processes. And one way to look at a little bit additional information on legislation is through our readings. So we're going to really rely on Chapter 7 this week. But when we compare and contrast regulation versus legislation, I wanted to highlight the point found on page 155. And it's talking about legislation, not regulation, but legislation, and about bills being addressed. And on page 155, it says, bills can be amended, substituted, or die at any number of points during the session. Checks and balances are built into the process. Bills must be scrutinized by both houses and successfully navigate through committees where testimony is heard. If a bill is passed by both houses and signed by the president, or if it's a state, the governor, then they are enacted and become law. I want to highlight this one sentence. Bills must pass during the session in which they are introduced. Otherwise, they quote-unquote die, with the docket for that congressional session or state General Assembly being cleared, and the bill must be reintroduced in a subsequent session. So the terms legislation, act, law, and statute are synonyms, not cinnamons. I must be thinking of cinnamon cookies here, but we won't go back there. Synonyms. So legislation also refers to both a bill in progress and a law that has been enacted. Now, when referring to laws regulating professions, the term practice act is used. And then it goes on to talk about regulations. And so that's what we're focusing on in this part of the course. So we're transitioning from a focus on legislation, but please make sure as you're doing your policy change that you remember about what I just read on page 155. But we're changing from legislation to a focus on regulation. So regulation is once a bill is enacted into a law, how are we going to regulate that law? How are we going to put it into practice? So on page 157, it talks about the state's regulatory process, starting with the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which specifies that all powers not specifically vested in the federal government are reserved for the states. And one of these powers is the duty to protect its citizens. So nursing regulatory bodies really have that as the focus, public safety. So we'll be looking at another issue, which I think from your readings is I wanted to highlight, and that is the page 161 is where it is explained, but the table 7.1, which is on page 162. This is a model of regulation that nursing boards and regulatory bodies use. So let's look at the, and they call it the evidence-informed health policy model. So I want you to look at that and see how nursing regulatory bodies do protect the public safety and do use evidence-informed evidence-informed health policy. So we're using evidence-based practice, but we're changing the terminology to one that I really like, evidence-informed. And we're not just looking at evidence-informed practice, we're looking at evidence-informed health policy. So how are nursing regulatory bodies using that? And we're going to look at a focus on the National Licensure Compact, which is a model. So the NLC, you probably are all familiar with the NLC, but we're going to look further into depth on that. And that is an example of a mutual recognition regulatory model of multi-state regulation. So that is an example of a mutual recognition model. But what I want to say is it is on multi-state regulation. So we're going to look at that. So again, please read through chapter 7. It's an important chapter. And you're also going to be completing your planned change policy assignment. I'm having a little difficulty talking today. Can you tell? But I'm not going to restart. I'm going to keep on going. So you're going to submit your final planned change policy. Hopefully you've done some editorials. Maybe you're going to look at things slightly different based on the information on page 155. Maybe not. So that is the final assignment for this course, and you're going to see that it is due at the end of this week. And then we're going to dive a little bit into the Nurse Licensure Compact, so the NLC. And this is a web page, and it is the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, so NCSBN. And they consider themselves, you'll see it right on the top of the web page, as leading regulatory excellence in nursing. So we're going to, I want you to focus on the information found in this link, but at the top of the link, there's a couple of tabs that you can click on. I want you to make sure that you click on the About the NLC and specifically look at the benefits of the NLC. Another tab, How it Works, and take a look at the comparison fact sheet. I kind of like that. It's about driver's license being compared to nursing license, and watch the brief video. And then finally click on the tab about frequently asked questions, and you will have learned a little bit more, even if you're knowledgeable, about the Nurse Licensure Compact. It even is a section for if you would like to, if your state participates in the NLC model, you may want to obtain this licensure. So 40 states now, as of 2023, allow this multi-state regulatory model of licensure. You're going to use this information and the information I've gone over already in the discussion board. So it has two parts. First is comparing and contrasting the legislative and regulatory processes. I did it briefly when we first started this video. And then I want you to explain the National Licensure Compact Include how it works, what information you found that was interesting, and what are the benefits. You might want to share whether or not you have it, whether your state is one of those 40 states. So, and don't forget to reply to your classmates' post. So I hope you have a very good understanding by the end of this learning unit about the difference between legislative and regulatory processes, ways in which the nursing regulatory bodies act to protect the public safety. That's what they're there for. And I think nursing often misses that point, but they are there to their primary mission and vision is to protect the public safety, and they can do so by using evidence-informed health policy module. And then I hope by the end you're very fluent in knowing about the NLC. So have a good week and talk to you soon.